teaching precede her. And I first heard about her from our beloved Ben Bayet, our Barry Rosekind, who called me up. He calls me Nat, and that's all good. He says, Nat, I have the most amazing teacher at Pardes. And he was so excited about all he was learning. And so that was many years ago. And he kept on learning, and then Stephanie went and learned and said, Nat, she's amazing. And then all of you who do the IJS, Institute for Jewish Spirituality, were like, wow, Yitzchak is coming to Beth Jacob. So, yay. And I know it will only be amazing. And in a moment, I'm going to have Adam Teitelbaum introduce her. But there's another reason I'm excited for today. I'm excited that we get to honor the Teitelbaums. Rabbi David and Robin Teitelbaum. And I'm looking around the room, and I would say about half of the people here know Rabbi Teitelbaum. He was the rabbi here for 38 years, who preceded me, and I'm finishing my 30th year. And he was a rabbi who had such heart.
No, I'm watching the...
and such wisdom. And he graced this pulpit and this community for many years.
Whatever you want.
You know, many will know him for
Just
a few
don't get
key
the noodle
things.
dish.
They'll know him
That heavy noodle
for how
dish.
he helped us
Never
through
liked
the
it.
fire.
And get enough for tomorrow night.
And I'll never forget the story of him saying the day after, it's permitted to cry, and holding this community together and moving us forward. Many know him for his social justice, that he walked with Dr. King and Selma, that he supported Soviet Jews. Many know him for his love of Israel, that he instilled in this community. Many know him as a Reconstructionist pioneer and thinker who made us think about what we meant when we said the word God, who always said it has to make sense. Many know him for his innovations. And when I say this is the Teitelbaum Lecture, it's not just David, but it's David and Robin. Because all the things I mentioned were David and Robin. And when we talk about innovations, we talk about things like the Children's Theater. We talk about things like Camp Arazim that they helped founded, that Adam and I both attended as little pishers. And for all that we talk about those amazing pieces of him and his rabbinate, what stands out the most to me about Rabbi Teitelbaum was his kindness and love. You know, I would go visit somebody in the hospital, and they said, hey, Rabbi Teitelbaum was here, and he was so gentle and kind. He'd go to Shiva houses, and he would do it in a quiet way, full of grace. And when I got here, the young rabbi, he only supported me with love. It's hard to walk in the shadow of someone who's so beloved. He let me do it by always supporting me, by always deferring, by only questioning me in private, and always praising everything that was going on here. He had such gratitude and such grace and dignity. And he was the person who I would talk to when I needed a rabbi, as did so many other rabbis in the Bay Area. He was the rabbi's rabbi. He loved study. There's no greater honor for him than to have a lecture with a wonderful teacher. So from his biography, I want to read you from his ethical will to his kids. He writes, Judaism, the Jewish people, the state of Israel, have been especially precious to me and your mother. Keep studying. Lead a Jewish life. Be active in the Jewish community. I've become a rabbi to serve the Jewish people. And so it's with honoring this incredible man, this man who is worthy of honor, and honoring this incredible woman who was a force, who had a spirit, and who was indomitable, that we dedicate this lecture, and I'll call on another Ben Bayit, Adam, who stayed such an integral part of this community over the years, to introduce our speaker. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you for that great introduction. It's really great to hear that. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see so many faces. I would like to start off by acknowledging that this is the first of these annual Teitelbaum Lectures since my mom, Zichrona Livracha, passed away this past July 5th. These annual lectures are in honor of my parents, Robin and David Teitelbaum. Growing up, they instilled in both my brother, Josh, and I a deep love of Israel and the Jewish people. This is what we call Ahavat Yisrael. So it is with great concern that I hear the news these days. I just spoke to my brother this morning, and he was concerned, and he's more gung-ho than most that I know. But I heard his concern. And so in the past few days, there have been devastating wildfires in Israel, as a lot of you know. And this morning, a Houthi missile landed at Ben Gurion Airport. I want to remind everyone that this is the 576th day since the start of the war on October 7th, with 59 of our hostages still being held in Gaza. So these are tough times for the Jewish people and Israel. But with all that being said, I have great faith in the resilience of the people of Israel and those of us in the diaspora. Remember, we are the people who have survived much worse and went on to continue to be a light unto the nations. Indeed, for over 3,000 years, we have proven that we are time and again on the right side of history. Am Yisrael Chai. With that, I'd like to introduce our speaker this afternoon. Yiska Smith is a spiritual activist, educator, mentor, and meditation guide. She addresses the spiritual practice of encountering the divine spark within and beyond. In fact, Yiska views Judaism as a spiritual practice. She is indeed a unique spiritual trailblazer, as she has carved her own path through Jewish tradition and spirituality. She relies on Jewish spiritual teachings to inform and uplift her students, acting as a compass, gently guiding them to their unique inner selves. Yiska teaches Jewish contemplative practice and spiritual texts at the Pardes Institute for Jewish Studies and Applied Jewish Spirituality. She has also founded and directs the Conscious Community in Nachlo in Jerusalem that hosts Shabbat spiritual gatherings, virtual guided meditation, and spiritual text classes. Her book, Planting the Seeds of the Divine, Torah Commentaries to Cultivate Your Spiritual Practice, has recently been released. And now please welcome Yiska Smith.
Wow. Wow. Shalom everyone, Barachot habaot and Barachim habaim. So, where to start? It's like you introduced the PSS Rebbe for me, and how you honored the Rabbi Teitelbaum and his wife. Because actually the PSS Rebbe also honored his wife in a similar sentiment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was just so moved by what you said. Thank you. Thank all of you. So much gratitude to all of you, and special gratitude to Steph and Jordan, who are not only hosting me with a roof over my head, but are hosting me and helping me feel at home with them. I was blessed to meet, as you said, Barry several years ago, and then when Steph came to visit, and then thank God I'm able to meet Jordan, and we've really developed such a bond. And you've been the shatchanit to meet you, and that's why I'm here today. It's such an honor. It's mamash kavod, we say. You know, the word kavod we translate as honor. It also means heavy. And there's a weight of responsibility, and a weight of a calling, and a weight of, I hope whatever I say this prayer to my Creator before any lecture or teaching. Whatever it is you're supposed to hear, that's what I hope comes out of my mouth. So, with no further ado, let's start with the words that come out of my mouth. So, as we say, al regel achat, on one foot, where I'm at Jewishly in terms of the tradition, I started learning Jewish texts in 1974 in Yerushalayim. I fell in love with Israel the first time I got off the plane in 1971. I was there during the Yom Kippur War in 1973. That was my first war. And then in 1974, right before I started a master's program at JTS in Jewish education, I had the privilege of meeting my first teacher in Torah. And I can remember his eyes sparkling. And I fell in love with text. And I always feel over the 50 plus years, 5 plus decades, it's always the text that drew me a little bit more than the official prayer service. You know, we have 3 legs. It says in Pirkei Avot that the world really rests on 3 pillars, like a tripod. One is Torah, the other is Avodah, which means our worship, our practice. At one time it was in the temple. Since the temples have been destroyed, it's now replaced by prayer. And the third is basically putting goodness and kindness into the world. And as much as I love to put kindness into the world, it's very informed by the text that I learn. Especially over the years, I spent time in the ultra-Orthodox world with Chabad. I grew up in a conservative home on Long Island, before I made Aliyah. And between the Chabad and the conservative, and I've also dabbled in reform over the years, I've really come to see myself as post-denominational. And the teaching that I'm going to share with you is a post-denominational type of redemptive Torah. While the PSSN Rebbe, and I'll explain who he is, he himself would be looked at as an ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Rebbe in Poland, in Warsaw, and he perished during the Holocaust. He was murdered in Trarinki death camp in November 1943. Nevertheless, his Torah, his teachings really appealed. He really cultivated a global audience. You know, as you mentioned, that I'm getting ready, as actually June 1st the book will be released. Oh. So I thought, did I miss the date? Right? But what was I going to say about the my book has a target audience that's very wide, and I learned that from the PSSN Rebbe. Rather than more of a narrow, it does have a lot of scholarship, but also spiritual practice and my own creative Torah. And where I'm at now in a post-denominational living in Israel type of identity, I feel that there's pieces of me in all the different movements outside of Israel, but the bigger part of me, really no movement can hold. Because I teach and I learn a Torah of creativity, and it emphasizes the internal work rather than the external observance. See, if we look at the different movements, one of the ways of distinguishing, one from the other has to do with how the halachot are observed, some more, some less, and a lot of the discussions and the different, what concerns the rabbis is about that. And I would just like to say that I believe, at least what I feel I'm called, and many others like myself, maybe perhaps I would suggest we need to do Jewish a little bit less and be Jewish a little bit more. The doing is outside around, but the being is encountering the divine spark within us. And when I started learning from this Rebbe's teachings about 13, 14 years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, he knows me. Even though he died in 1943. No, he's alive in this room through the words of my first teacher of the PSSN. So what's PSSN? He was the rabbi of a town in Poland called PSSN, and then he became known as the PSSN. That was a Polish tradition with the rabbis, whatever Rebbe, where the Rebbe was a rabbi of that town, they, like Lubavitch. You've heard of Chabad, Lubavitch, Lubavitcher. That was a town in Ukraine. So Piaseczna was a town in Poland. After World War I, he moved to Warsaw. And the home he moved to in 1918, after the war, he established what would be considered quite a progressive pedagogically yeshiva. It attracted 300 students at that time, boys. I do believe in my dream perfect world. If he were alive today, it would be egalitarian. We don't know. But it did win, actually it earned a lot of accolades from Polish non-Jewish pedagogists. Like they really recognized his, what we would call today, individualized learning. So he already put his name on the map, so to speak, in the Jewish world with the yeshiva. He also had a Beit Knesset. He had a synagogue. He also cultivated, he was very different than the typical Hasidic rabbis in that he created a society called B'nai Machshava Tova, conscious community, as it's been translated by Andrew Cohen Kiner, where he would work with people with spiritual practices, how to exercise, just like the way we exercise in the gym, in the physical fitness, and discover muscles that, oh, where does tricep come from? Well, it's the same thing with the spiritual fitness. Oh, I feel more serene inside. Oh, I feel I'm touching the energy of something bigger than me. Oh, I'm not as threatened by people around me because I'm anchored in my faith inwardly. And we become trained and we work out, and that's called Avodah Ruchanit, spiritual practice. And in his 7 books, this is how he established and distinguished himself from not only the other Hasidic rabbis, but from all the rabbis in Poland. And what's happened in the past, let's say 25 years, there's been an increase. More and more people are learning his teachings. 13 years ago, if someone were to ask, so what are you learning? Who are you teaching? Oh, the Piaseczna. Who's he? Wait, where's he from? Now, oh, you too are teaching the Piaseczna? So in this world of Hasidic scholarship and also Neo-Hasidism, which is a redo, like 2.0 after 1.0, it's becoming more and more popular because I believe he's addressing what we're all yearning for, what we're all thirsty for, and that is connections. We so much want to connect, first of all, with ourselves, with the deeper part of ourselves, which then allows us to connect with those around us, and then even beyond, with other expressions of creation, not only the human being. And when we cultivate these connections, we do sense the divine presence in a more palpable, visceral way. So he lived in Warsaw, and he taught. And the house that he lived in including through when Warsaw became, the Jewish neighborhood became the Warsaw Ghetto. He survived the Treblinka deportations. He was in the Warsaw Ghetto during the uprising, and that's when he was, with many others, when the Nazis decided to liquidate the ghetto, that's when he was deported. He was sent to the Treblinka death camp. And that was in April 1943, and then he was murdered in November 1943. His full name is Rabbi Kalonymus Kalmush Shapiro. All right, so that's a little bit about me, a little bit about him, and now I want to share with you what would be considered then and also now in terms of a stereotypical Orthodox Hasidic Rebbe, something quite radical and very innovative, and I would even suggest, it's so intriguing and compelling. It's redemptive. It really is redemptive. It really helps us get in touch with a piece of ourselves that without that, we may have a sense that I'm missing something within me. And it has to do with the subject of quieting, which you can see is the title of the talk. He did write 7 books. However, this was not included in any of his books, because this was not written by him. This was written by one of his students. It's now found, the editors have put this at the end of one of his books. But I just for a moment want to spend a minute or two explaining what quieting means. There are many other spiritual disciplines that really emphasize different practices, especially more from the East. We know in Buddhism and Western Buddhism and in Hinduism. There's also all over there are people, even in private, not necessarily part of a movement, but cultivate something more in solitude, where they quiet themselves down. In this teaching, I hope you'll appreciate, the goal is not to just quiet the mind down. The goal is to quiet the mind down from external noise. So then we can hear a deeper part of ourselves, which we call in the tradition the still small voice, the kol d'madaka. And from the still small voice, which is that piece of God's in us, called the Shekhinah, the divine presence, we can actually receive. If we quiet everything down around us, we can receive what's called guidance. It's almost like prophetic. And he uses the word not like the classical prophets, like for Isaiah and Jeremiah and all the others. That's a prophecy for the future. We say Nevuah la'atid. That period of that classical prophecy has passed. But we can each, ourselves, everyone in this room, it doesn't depend on how religious or not religious, observant, non-observant, how many times you pray a day, not a pray. It's something deep, deep inside where in that space of quietude, it's almost like an intuitive sense. We will receive what's called Nevuah lahadracha. That is the voice of prophecy for the individual's guidance. It's like having your own rabbi inside of you. That's spiritual. Well, it never has to go before the board of directors. How lucky. But what do we do to gain access to that? Well, I turn to a very well-known Western a Buddhist who has passed away not that long ago, only a couple of years ago, Thich Nhat Hanh. And what did he say? One of his hashtag, I learned that word. Hey, not bad for someone over 70, hashtag, right? Don't just do something, sit there. Right? Don't just do, we're so busy, like I said, doing Jewish. Let's just sit and be right now with each other. For example, let us share as we prepare to go into the text. I invite you all with me. It's such a centering practice, is to focus on receiving breath. I'm not inviting you to take a breath, but to receive a breath as we're being breathed into by our Creator. Each inhalation is the statement from our Creator, I still want you to be here. So let us receive that with gratitude, pause for a moment, and then let it out. We don't own it. It's on loan. So let it out back into the universe through our exhalation, followed by a pause. I invite you to join me as an anchoring so that we can begin to go into the text. 3 breath cycles. Let's share that together. Thank you. Tada. So there's a verse in the book of Kings 1, which you have there, both in Hebrew. I'll be reading the English, but for those who are fluent or literate in Hebrew, you have the Hebrew text. And he said, meaning the divine, the eternal, go out, talking to Elijah the prophet, who was hiding in a cave because idol worshippers were pursuing him because he was challenging them. So he was hiding for his life. They were pursuing him. So God said, basically, go out. I'll be with you. You'll sense my presence. Stand on the mount before the eternal. And behold, the eternal passed by, and a great and strong wind tore apart the mountains. Very dramatic. And broke rocks into pieces before the eternal. But the eternal was not in the wind. Meaning Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi, did not sensed a lot of drama, but did not sense the divine presence. And then the verse continues, after the wind and earthquake, the ground was rumbling, but again the eternal was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. But the eternal was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And from that, we draw in Jewish meditation, Jewish spiritual practice, Jewish contemplative practice, the idea of quieting down all the drama around us, all the noise, the earthquakes, the winds, the fire. These are all metaphors. And I don't think anyone here lacks being distracted at times by a lot of external noise and drama. I mean, more now than maybe, I don't say ever, but definitely a lot now. So we can't raise the volume of the still small voice. She speaks the still small voice 24/7. However, we can lower the volume of the fires and the earthquakes and all the winds in our lives. And by doing that, including quieting our own mind from all that external stimuli that bombards us, we then begin to become more sensitive to that still small voice, to a point where we can even converse with this voice. Like one part of me is actually talking to another part of me in silence or in a light whisper, where I can say, please, I need more guidance. I want to love more. I want to manifest more compassion. I want to be able to connect with more. It's that type of a prayer where I want to be more you, God. I want to give you nachat, like our children and grandchildren give us nachat. Well, we have a third parent, a spiritual parent. And when we go deep, we can seek the advice and the guidance to give our Creator nachat. So let's begin. So this person, I have a note here with his name. After a lot of research, I finally found out who this student is. So he was the son of a Hasid of the Rebbe in Warsaw, Rabbi Label Bein, B-I-E-N. He left with his family. He left Warsaw. He already saw that there were going to be really bad times. And many of the Jews were able to leave, and he settled. There was this initiative from Kobe, Japan, of all places. And that's where he settled. Can you imagine a group of Polish Hasidic Jews going to Kobe, Japan? Well, they did. They did. And his son, Elazar, was one of the students in the Rebbe's yeshiva. So he's writing this when he's in Japan, as he was saved from the Holocaust. So he begins by saying as follows: from our holy teacher, the great master, may the memory of a tzaddik be a blessing for the life of the world to come, and then may God avenge his blood. Now that's a tradition, Hashem Yinkom Damo, when someone has been martyred. They've been murdered because they're Jewish. And that's a phrase from Tanakh, from the Bible. And one time someone said to me, when you quote that, you're such a kind, compassionate person. Why would you say, may Hashem avenge his blood? So my reply back was, because I am I try to be a kind, compassionate person. I realize only the Creator could avenge a martyr's blood. What could we do? Be vigilantes? God forbid. That's not our calling. That's not who we are. But there's blood there that needs to be avenged. But only the Creator can do that. So when someone is martyred, we add that phrase, Hashem Yinkom Damo. May Hashem, the divine, the eternal, avenge the person's blood. So whenever you see that, you know the person died because the person was murdered for being Jewish. All right, so this is what this student, he continues in about 1935 or 1936, excuse me. I was a study partner of my friend, a dear student of the PSSner, Mr. Yisachar Nachman Zev. What can you extract? What does this mean when he calls him Mr.? What would you think this means?
He's not a rabbi.
He was not a rabbi, right? They were learning, they were younger, they were learning as chavruta in the yeshiva. And he also says, may God avenge his blood. So we know that, in fact, he perished. He said, I was privileged during the 10 days of Teshuvah There's a period of time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Many of you may know it, the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. It's a custom among lots of Hasidim with the Rebbes where they have a private audience, greeting the new year, where they receive spiritual advice for the year. So the PSSNA called these two people in, these two young men. They were chavruta, and he called and invited them into his study to have a private audience with them. So he would be able to give them particular spiritual advice. All right? I'll let you read. I just pretty much summarized what's there. He does mention, though, that when he learned with his friend, with his chavruta, his learning partner, the matter of quieting. That's what the Rebbe wanted to share with them. And he said, but woe for the loss that I do not remember the whole of it, but I do recall what is in here. Okay. So now he's going to teach us his account, how he understood what the Rebbe was teaching about what we would say Jewish meditation. But there's no Hebrew word for meditation. In Israel today, we say meditatsia. Right? But there are words in Hebrew, hitbonenut, keshivut, sumat lev, that really define what that is. Paying attention, becoming aware of what already is. So he begins by recounting how the Rebbe taught a piece of Talmud, very short piece, from the tractate Brachot. A dream is 1/60th of prophecy. What does that mean? A dream is 1/60th of prophecy. Remember, I said earlier that the PSSNA believe we can gain access to this very individualized prophetic voice within to guide us, not to tell, to be a fortune teller, God forbid, and try to say, oh, I know what it is in the future. It's not to forecast the future. It's to gain this very personal, intimate advice. So now he's saying, and he's bringing this Talmudic wisdom to us. He's going to make a connection between dreaming and prophecy and how that plays itself out in our lives. The master continued with his well-known thesis that the ego, literally, what we say in Hebrew, yeshut, that there is, the is, or the anuchiyot, the I-ness, constitutes a barrier to the heavenly influx, which means, yes, I want to gain access, but right now it's all about me. Like I'm not making any space for something bigger than me. And what I'm suggesting is not, when we cultivate humility or a diminishing of the ego, it's not that we think less of ourselves. That's not what that is. The Rebbe in no way would ever suggest that we suffer from a low self-esteem. No, it's not that we think less of ourselves. It's that we think of ourselves less. A big difference, very big difference. I see it really connects with many people here. Because if we're only thinking about ourselves, well, there's no space to receive this heavenly influx that we want to gain access to. It's like if you were to come over for dinner to my home for Shabbat. I open up the door, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, I'm so glad you're here, we're so glad we're here, and we can go back and forth. Meanwhile, what are my guests waiting for? I need to move out of the way so they can come in. That's what this is. So he believes when we're sleeping, we're not as much in our way. Because we're not actively thinking, we're not actively wanting. So he continues and he says, if one's thoughts and intellects are awake, it is difficult for the heavenly flow to penetrate. However, when one sleeps, their knowing mind, the mind that creates and thinks and thoughts, are quieted down. And precisely because at such times they have no self-directed consciousness, it is possible for the heavenly influence to rest upon the person. That's why when we have these dreams can take us all over the world. The possibilities are endless because we're not in the way of the dreams. This is the meaning of a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. He continues relying on this teaching when he says the following. It is well known from the teachings of our Master that we are more spiritually aroused We wake up, it's called hitorut in Hebrew, to a greater extent in prayer than in Torah study. And here I'm lecturing this very special day, and it's about Torah study. But I'm not right now, at the same time, spending time with myself in solitude, cultivating the awareness of the still small voice. It doesn't have to be either or. We can do both. In this practice, it's not about Talmud Torah. It's not about Torah study. It is about dedicating a little time to be in solitude and do what we have to cultivate, that which we need so we can be part of something larger within us. And that's why the Rebbe said that Torah study, the only downside relative to this, relevant to this, is that when we learn Torah, we tend to utilize our sense of I-ness, which he says is the block to this heavenly influx of spiritual awareness. I don't understand this. I do understand this. I disagree with you. I agree with you. I don't think this is what the Tosafot meant. I don't believe this is what the Rishonim. And you hear a lot of I's. Have you ever gone into a Beit Midrash? Right? As everyone's up and down and like this and the I. Which, that's appropriate. Because when we learn Torah, it is about me trying to understand the words, the text. But that's not what's going on here. And that's why I said earlier, it's less about doing Jewish and more about being. And to be, we need to be quieter. So he says, in prayer, it's just the opposite. The essence is the diminishing of the sense of self, because I do want to connect more with my Creator, not with the text. And he started the yeshiva. He was a Rav, so it's not coming from someone who's not mamash. He's a Talmid Chacham, not only a Rebbe. Now, when a person sleeps, it is impossible to desire anything for themselves. For are they not asleep? We don't want things when we're sleeping. Thus, the essence. Now, this is the conclusion of what he's teaching up until now. The essence is when it is possible to come to a sleep consciousness while we are awake. He's not suggesting daydreaming, but while we are awake, to somehow enter that cloud of awareness, that soft, gentle, light space within us that usually we only encounter when we're sleeping. And that's the 160th prophecy. That is to say, we wish to quiet a person's unceasing flow of thoughts and desires. It's nonstop. It is nonstop. For it is the way of thoughts to become so mistabechet in Hebrew. He says mistabechet, they become entangled. It's like anyone has long hair, and if it's not taken care of, washed and brushed, it gets entangled to a point where I can't separate one strand from the next. Have you ever felt that with your thoughts? Have you ever felt that with your thoughts? Yeah, exactly. So when someone says, well, how are you? What is your name?
I'm Susan.
Susan, how are you feeling? Oh, how am I feeling? I'm so overwhelmed.
Spinning around.
Yeah, exactly. So
When I'm quiet.
it's the thoughts that are not quiet. It's that stimuli. So it's not only from outside, it's also from within. So that is the PSSNA's introduction to this 4-step modality of how to quiet ourselves down so we can then gain access. We can then unlock the door and enter into this other space of spiritual awareness, of the Shekhinah. And then we can talk with her. This is a good, natural, organic stop before I continue. Are there any questions? Are we clear where he's going with this so far? Because that's very important to me, that you're with the teaching. Okay, so let's continue. And then he gave, so now this student, this Elazar is his name, he then writes, he then gave concrete advice concerning how to quiet thought. This is the tachlis. Now probably you are all wondering, when's she's going to tell us what to do? Okay, here's step number 1. The first step, after I would suggest, that's very important to, again, cultivate breath awareness so it relaxes you, it centers you. And then the first step, he said first that a person should begin watching their thoughts for a short while. Be your own observer. Instead of trying to be in the thoughts, look at your thoughts as if you're a photographer taking a picture of your thoughts. And then as you start to do that, and do this for a short while, he doesn't say how long, because he's not this black or white type of Rebbe or rabbi who either it's this way or it's this way. For some of you in the room, a short while can be 20 minutes. For others, it's 1 minute. So what he's encouraging us is, I'm not asking really a lot of you. You all have a short while. So just for a short while, for a few moments, ask yourselves, what am I thinking? Not why, not how, just what am I thinking? And then stay with that thought, and then ask the whys and the hows, and engage with it. So let's try that, just for like maybe 1 minute, if not 30 seconds. We'll close our eyes, do the inner work. That's why you don't have to close your eyes if you feel uncomfortable, but I would suggest that you do. And then when I say go, the homework is, or the assignment in class, just be aware, what am I thinking? It could be about dinner, it could be about the text, it could be about your grandchildren. It doesn't matter what it's about. He doesn't say, think only holy thoughts. He'll get to that, don't worry, he'll get to that. What he wants us to do is first chill out. So the thoughts are not like this. So the first thing is, what am I thinking? So go. What am I thinking? I'm thinking about. To yourselves, say this. And then begin to explore it. And really stay with the thought. And just, if you feel yourself drifting, just gently lean into and return to that thought. I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking whatever it is. Expand it, deepen it. Be aware of breathing it in. The embodied sensation of what am I thinking? What is my one thought right now? And as we conclude, he believes, and this is what the student writes, that a person will slowly feel that their mind is emptying. Their thoughts are slowing down a bit from their habitual flow. It's like I'm here and there are 10 other speakers out there waiting to come on stage. So they're pushing me. It's like, I want center stage. Like, I want center stage. And what happens is, instead of one speaker at here, there's 10 speakers all talking at the same time. That's what I would suggest he's teaching about. But if you're all listening only to the one speaker that's here and you're real focused, there's no room for the next speaker to crowd in because it simply is not going to happen. It can't happen when everyone is just focused on the first speaker. And that here is the thought that's speaking to us. So he really believes if we spend a few moments exploring whatever it is, the one thought, we will begin to settle in to a more of an emptying out, or this non-constant bombardment of the stimuli that it's almost like it's attacking us. That begins to cease. Then, after we do that, we're still holding the one thought. He then suggests to replace it with a holy thought. He relies, being a traditional Hasidic Rebbe, this is during the interwar period, on the Tanakh, on a pasuk. I would expand that and say, this is the Jewish version of a mantra. And begin to gently, again, everything's gently, there's not force. As you are still thinking about that one thought, begin to say, as if you're saying, goodbye, 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 Shema Yisrael, Shema Yisrael. I mean, the Rebbe, and he writes in Hebrew, kagon, which means, for example. You don't have to copy me, he's telling his students. But for example, he would repeat, Adonai Elohim Emet, Adonai Elohim Emet. I choose Ein Od Milvado, there's none besides the Creator, Ein Od. And softly hear yourself saying it to yourself, or because we do this usually in solitude, a slight whisper, Ein Od Milvado. Slowly and gently, you're filling up that empty space now. There are no more thoughts bombarding you with this one idea. And I do seriously invite you, if something else works for you outside of the written Torah, use that. What's important, as he says here, is that it needs to be a single thought of holiness, of sacredness. That's the space of the soul inside of us. That's the space of the Kol Dumamad Daka. That's the space of the Shekhinah. It's holiness, it's sacredness. Now, let's just for a moment pick whatever, and it should just be a few words or a pasuk, what comes to your mind, and just hear yourselves thinking it to you without using your vocal cords. You could even say, what a wonderful day. I'm so grateful to be alive. I caution us not to limit what holiness is. God's world is very big, very, very big. We humans tend to narrow it. If you feel right now grateful, oh, God, I'm so grateful. Moda'ani lefanecha, moda'ani lefanecha. Now, hopefully, he believes if we do this, and this is our spiritual workout, we'll get to a point where we begin to really feel close to what we call God. And everyone has their own understanding of what that experience is like. This is not limited to the realm of Jewish law. This is Jewish experience, human experience. So afterwards, now what he suggests is now we can begin in the dialogue, in the conversation, in the narrative. A person can now request what they require in whatever aspect of character development that needs refinement. It is important to, when we pray, to also, we see this in the Amidah, we have 13 prayers during the weekday Amidah, the silent prayer, that are prayers of request. And we do, help me with this job interview, help me with the bank mortgage I applied for. I mean, who else? Like when one of my teachers taught us years ago, when someone says to me, is it okay to ask God for something like a bank mortgage approval? So the teacher said, who else are you going to ask? The banker? Right? Like, if you believe in God, yeah, you can ask God for that, but that's not here. That's on page 242 in the Siddur. Shema Kolenu, right? Here it's, help me, guide me, please, Creator, Divine Shekhinah. I really want to be more you. I want to be my higher self, my godly self. And I realize I need to work on patience. Because only you know, only God knows. You know how patient you are. Now, I can't be as patient as you are, but I can be more patient as a human being. Help me, guide me. And this is what, at this moment, it's so tender, and yet it's so firm. It's not weak. There's a backbone to this. There's fiber, and yet it's soft. The PSSNA uses the word rakut in Hebrew. Rach is softness. We don't have to push it. We don't have to push it. And he, according to the student, the PSSNA himself gave examples, as I'm giving you the example with patience. He gives the example of, it could be strengthening of faith. Help me believe in you more. Or the love of God. And I will tell you, Those of us who live in Israel with whatever is going on with us, those of you who are living here with what's going on with you, sometimes you just want to turn to God and say, you're making it really difficult. You really are. I don't, what's that line from Fiddler on the Roof? We're the chosen people. Choose someone else for a little while. Work with me, God, really? It's not enough. And then we have this, we have that. We can do that. We can feel our faith weakening, and that's okay. What's not okay is if we feel, Ad Kan, I'm not going further. I can't do this anymore with God. That's the tragedy. Because maybe when we feel our faith weakening, that's the invitation to seek more strength from the Creator. That's a very Hasidic way of looking at the other side. When something is visibly good, we don't really have to believe that much in God. That is good. We see that is good. What about when it's not so apparent? What is the challenge? What are we called for when it's not so apparent? Maybe it's an invitation to dafka, be closer, when we don't feel that close. And that we can't do alone. That we can't do alone. So I believe that's why he may suggest we can use this time to ask deeply within, help me really with my faith. It's weakening. And my trust. So he then merited to hear from him the way of quieting in the strengthening of faith. The Rebbe actually repeated what he would say. As I just said to you, help me be more patient. So this is what the Rebbe said. I believe can you just imagine, you're in this study with, like any Jewish study of Torah, they're surrounded by books, and there's the Rebbe, and there's these two young men in front of him, like, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? And this is what he says. I believe with complete faith that the Creator is the only existence in the world. I do believe that. And that there's no reality besides God, besides the Creator. The entire world and everything in it are only the radiance and illumination of the eternal. And then he repeated it several times. So I would ask someone, if someone would want to answer the question, is that what is the PSS asking of God? Would anyone want to suggest? I know this is titled as a lecture, but it can be a little bit interactive. Anyone can suggest? Okay, I would suggest. He wants to go even deeper with that. Like he's saying, I'm with you, God. I'm with you. And he's not, we don't sense from this he's undergoing a spiritual, like we have a financial crisis. We could have a spiritual crisis. We don't gather that from these words. They're beautiful words. And I could do more. This is what he would be asking of his Creator. And also he says he teaches, and he really argues for this, do not say this forcefully. Sometimes you go, God, what are you doing? How can you do this? By the way, there is a place for that. It's called hitbodedut, where you go out into the woods, or you go in under the covers, and you just unfiltered, you just scream and yell and cry and dance and laugh and cry. That's not this. This is much more. This is doing the inner work, not going out. So in the inner work, he's suggesting to us not to do this b'chazakah in Hebrew, not to do this strongly, but softly. It's a soft practice, because the whole point here is to quiet my thoughts down. And that's what I've been doing. And speaking with great forcefulness will do what? It will wake up everything that I've quieted down. Because then it's about me, not any longer about the connection with the divine. So on the contrary, one utters the phrase with great gentleness, kal ma'od. Please guide me to be more patient. Please guide me to be more patient. Please guide me to be more patient. I'm so impatient at times. Help me. also merited, this Elazar is telling us, to hear his teaching on the subject of love. And these were his words. I want to be so close to the Creator. Liyot karov. Could you imagine if you were close, not only aware, not only encountered, but actually sensed an intimate moment with the deeper part of yourself? And then that's how we can create spiritual, intimate moments with each other. So here he's role modeling for us. Yes, you can say, I want to be close to you, God. You don't have to do anything for me. I'm not asking for this, that. That's another time, another place. Right now, all I want is to sense closeness. Have you ever felt that, like with a loved one, a spouse, parent, child, a very good friend, where you can just sit together and just be grateful for the closeness? Is it ever, though, too close? No. We always want more closeness. I remember when I would visit my mom, who I was very close with, may her memory be for a blessing, Zechana Livracha, and it was hard visiting from Israel. I could only spend limited time. And I would always say, Mom, I just wish I could spend more time here. She said, I'll take what I can get. And now I get a WhatsApp message from my son who lives in the Golan. I made arrangements to rent an Airbnb right by me for Shabbat. I don't have enough room in my home for like 6 grandchildren and my son. So some will sleep by me, some in the Airbnb. And he said to me, Shavua Tov, I have a little bad news. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're not going to come for Shabbat. This is next week. He said, we can only stay the one night. We have to go back north on, let's say, Shabbat. So what do you think I said back to him? Exactly. I heard my mother, don't complain. You got them for one night. Be grateful for it because you did it to me. So now you're getting it back. All right? So be grateful. And for the Rebbe, these spiritual moments, these spiritual pearls or these golden nuggets of awareness, we can never have too many because they're infinite. It's the opposite of the physical. Cultivating gratitude in the physical is okay, like 20 pair of shoes is enough. I really don't need a 21st pair. I may want. But we have to know with the physical to say, Ad Kan, I have enough and I'm grateful. Spiritual awareness is you can never have enough. So we work harder. We roll up our sleeves, go back to the spiritual fitness room and do more spiritual work. I want to feel intimate closeness to the great Creator. And then he concludes, see what time it is. Oh, okay, we're good. We're good. I believe we're good, yeah. He then said, it is possible to use quieting also to correct. See, he gave 2 examples of increasing, of enhancing his faith, enhancing his love and closeness. Well, I gave actually a different example. I gave the example that he now introduces. I'm impatient. I'm really not. I've really worked very hard over the years, but I use that as an example because so many people today are impatient. I think the technology is where we are. I mean, there's always been technology. Where it is today really doesn't support patience. But this is where he outright teaches us. He says it clearly. You can use this practice to correct any harmful trait. We have a beautiful repertoire, a palette of midot to cultivate. A midah is the spiritual or emotional behavioral trait and characteristic. There's so many. Some of them are not so nice. Some of them distance us rather than cultivate closeness. So you can use this practice because you're coming from a place of quietude. So it's not, I'm a terrible person, and like, hitting, I'm a terrible person. There's no way I could ever feel close to God because look at all the sins I commit. Look at how I treat people or mistreat people. That's not him. Everyone has room for improvement. We're all a work in progress. So identify what piece do you want to work on that you feel really doesn't promote or manifest your higher self. And he gives example, but he said, be careful. Do not express it in a negative way. only in a positive way. As a pedagogue, he was very clear with his students to express whatever it is in the positive. We even have in the Chumash, there's one commandment is do not steal. Do not lie. Sheker, do not lie. But it's also worded, it's the only prohibition that has a positive counterpart. Distance yourself from a lie. It's like distance yourself. Rather than don't lie, take positive, we would call it today, mindfulness. A mindfulness practice of I'm distancing me from the deception. So here he sees how important that is when we want to become our higher selves, not to ask the creator within from a negative. And he gives us an example that we really need to cultivate the opposite of the bad trait. That's what we really want. So for example, if someone is plagued, and for those who are lazy, it's a plague. And that's a direct translation. I translate from the Hebrew. It's like a plague of laziness. Do not speak about moving away from laziness, but rather speak about acquiring enthusiasm. Help me be more enthusiastic. Does anyone know the very first law in the Shulchan Aruch? That's the book of all the codes of the laws, all the prohibitions, what we can do, what's mutar, what's permitted, what's asur, what's acceptable. I mean, it goes on and on, tens of thousands of law of how to do Jewish. What is the first law in the entire volumes? Anyone know what the first law is? When you wake up, roar like a lion, jump out of bed like a deer will be running. I mean, these metaphors of like, I'm here, world, modani lefanecha, God, get me going. Would you say that's enthusiasm? Yes. I don't know how many people say, oh, do I have to get out of bed now? Maybe go do the work and say, can you help me in the morning so I can get up and roar like a lion? I mean, he's so real. I mean, he's a real Rebbe. I mean, he talks to people. He doesn't want people to think, oh, I could never be like the Rebbe. It's not a matter of being like him. He wants us to be our higher selves. So he uses language. He couches everything in. It's like Emily Dickinson says. She wrote in that poem, I dwell in the realm of possibility. We don't have to dwell in the realm of probability. I mean, the probability is we wouldn't be here as a people right now. But because of possibility, yes. So this is the type of Torah. It is heart-driven. It's also the Torah of compassion. It's the Torah of possibility. Ki'ilu, what if? So he continues that ask for acquiring enthusiasm. He explained this by what can be easily observed regarding a young child. And many of you here have children, and many of you have also grandchildren. And we all know, if you want a child to stop crying, the worst thing is to say, stop crying. Do not cry. I have had it up to here. No more crying. And what happens? They cry. Exactly. So he uses that, which is very down to earth, very common for anyone who has children. And there are other ways to quiet a child down than insist that what they're doing, you've had it. I mean, that doesn't really promote self-esteem. I just have to share with my daughter. I'm so proud of my daughter because I teach her and I share with her some of these practices. So when I was over their house one day, it was for Shabbat, one of the two younger ones, he's now just turning 5. He was having a moment. Let's just say a moment, and he was crying. And she said to me, watch, I learned from you. I'm not going to tell Shalev not to cry. She said, Shalev, come here for a minute. We're going to do this exercise. And then Adeli, join us. Hold up your palm of your hand. I mean, you can do this with me. Every time you're inhaling, and then exhale. She's cultivating breath awareness with a 5 and 6-year-old. And when she got to the bottom of the pinky, she said to Shalev, now, how are you feeling now? He wasn't crying. She didn't tell him, don't cry. How are you feeling now? Would you like to get a nice hug from mommy? Yes, I would. And then she looked at me. I said, That's it. That's my nachat. That came from the Pius Etzner. I mean, you can put this right into like practical use with your family. Yeah. So then he says, also he taught, and this is for many of us today that may have trouble with step number one. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? It requires, it asks of me to settle me down. And many people, it's hard to settle themselves down. So he offers an alternative. Again, not only as a mystic, and not only as a rabbi, and not only as a rebbe, but as a pedagogue, he always knows there's someone in the room, and I would dare say it right now, someone in the room who feels, well, this is nice on paper, but the rebbe doesn't know me. And it's a big ask for me to sit for 5 minutes and focus on one thought. That's just not me. He already knows that, and this is like before World War II. It's not like 100 years later, like where we are. So he already offers, as if he heard the question, but he didn't. He knows in his mind, someone in this room is going to say, Rebbe, I can't, how do you do it? Any alternatives? So he already offers one. This is in a time when people had a real clock. Remember the old days? A clock with the 3 hands, the small, the medium, and the big? He said, there's another way to quiet. You can gaze at the small hand, the hour hand of a clock. You can do that. Just stare at it with your eyes open. You'll begin to also quiet the onslaught, which it hardly moves for a set period of time, for this also quiets one's desires and thoughts. So he always, throughout his books, he always offers like alternatives. It's never my way or the highway, so to speak, or I have the absolute truth. And if you really believe in me, this is what you'll do. He never speaks like that. Unfortunately, I think many of us are aware that some people do, some leaders do. And I would think it borders on abuse. He's not that. He's very, he holds us. And as one of my students at Pardes said, yeah, he holds us, but he also raises the bar. I said, yes, he does raise the bar. He sees us at our best. He's not going to lower the bar. But if you fall, and he believes you will, he's there to catch us. And that's the beauty of his teachings. And this is, for example. Now, what's the 4th step? The 4th, now that I feel close, I'm talking, I'm listening, and I'm feeling like, wow, this is the higher consciousness. This is really the higher means I'm aware of the divine presence. This is so wonderful. So before I close my practice, he suggests to close the practice with another verse. But this is a very specific verse, because he believes after the quieting, which will bring some sort of divine influx from above. What does that mean? I'm sensing the non-physical, energetic part of who I am. I'm sensing the part of me that encourages me, that believes in me, that's pure, that is kind, that is compassionate. All the good parts of me is what I'm sensing. That is the heavenly, that's the heavenly divine influx. It's called Hasha'at HaShekhinah. It's this influx of awareness. He instructed us to now recite a particular verse in the book of Psalms. It's in chapter 86, verse 11. And it's beautiful. It's really everything in one verse. Everything meaning if we want to be close to our Creator and the divine within us and each other. Teach me, eternal. Horeini Adonai darchecha. Teach me your ways. It's not like you're the king, I'm the servant. And there is that imagery, the Eved of Hashem, the Melech Malachim Malachim. But he's using a different modality here. It's the teacher-student, because he's the teacher with his students. So King David, who we believe traditionally wrote the Psalms, King David is asking God, I'm your student. I'm the king of Israel. I'm the king of Israel. You appointed me king. I want to learn from you. Teach me your way. Isn't that beautiful? Teach me your way. We have in the word, in the Hebrew, Horeni is morah, which is teacher. Teach me, God, your way. Ahalech ba'amitecha. So then I can walk in your truth. You know, there's two truths. There's my truth, and then there's the truth. We all have our personal subjective understanding of truth. But what King David was asking, and what the PSS is suggesting that we seek, is a more universal truth, the truth of our Creator. So teach me your way, so then I can walk in your truth. Yached levavi lir'eh shmecha. And it's so I will be more aware of your name. Now in Hebrew it's more nuanced. I have to point out two parts of the Hebrew. In the Hebrew it's levavi. Remember, for those who are familiar with the Shema, after we say the Shema, Baruch Shem Kavod, what do we say? Va'ahavta, right? Eta Shem Elokecha b'chol levavcha. Why not b'chol libcha? How many hearts do we have? Levav is like a plural. So there's all different. I mean, the rabbis love this. This is what keeps them busy. We all love this. The scholars love this because it's an inconsistency. So what the Hasidic answer, and the first Chabad Rebbe, Shneur Zalman of La'adi, writes in Tanya, just as physiologically, there's two chambers in the heart. There's two sides to the heart spiritually. There's the left side and the right side. Like the left side, which receives the fresh blood, is more like the unbridled passion. It's not that it's immoral, it's amoral. It does not connect to any moral or ethical system. It's just pure emotion. And the right side, which is more of the oxygenated, if I could use that word, is more refined, where it is connected, or it's within the boundary, some type of boundary of ethics and morality. So when God says, love God, love me with all your heart, He wants us also with the unbridled passion. We just try to train it, and so it can combine and it can be in harmony with the more refined part of you, rather than kill it. Well, here, this is what King David is also saying. It's saying that I want to connect, unify both parts of my heart. I'm seeking harmony. I'm seeking inner unification. How many people are so torn up within themselves? And here he wants to end this beautiful sacred practice by invoking King David here with his request about bringing inner unity. And I choose to define yirah, not as fear, as some people do, and I respect that. It just does not resonate with me. After many decades, I realized I can't be in a relationship if I'm always afraid. It just doesn't. It may work for other people. It doesn't work for me. So then I moved into another version, more modern, to be in a state of awe, to like Heschel said, to live in radical amazement. And as much as I like that, it's still not as personal. Like I could look at a sunset. I'm here and the sunset is there. Wow, I really feel Yirat Shamayim. I really feel this sense of awesomeness. But I'm here and the sun is over there. I need something more personal. And one of my teachers taught that one way to see Yirah is from Ro'eh. Instead of the Shoresh, meaning to fear, you can mix the letters with it's a Resh Aleph Hey instead of a Yud Resh Aleph. It means to see. Hashem, unify me so I could really see you. I could perceive you. And that's how I translated it here. So I want to be aware. I want to perceive your name. And he would sing this, the PSS, when he taught this to the students, these two students, he started singing a nigun to it, a special melody. And the student mentions now how pleasant and awesome was the vision I merited to hear and see, due to the merit of my dear friend who was mentioned above. He never took credit, even though it was traditional that the Rebbe would invite the Chavruta, the learning partners. He was so humble, he gave all the credit to his learning partner. Like that's who the Rebbe called him in, so of course he's going to call me in too. I kind of wrote on his accomplishments, which we don't believe that's true. They were both called in because they were both very special to the Piaseczna Rebbe. And then he says that our master greatly stressed this matter. I mean, to think of what different rabbis stress this is during the 10 days of Tshuva, right? It's really not 10 days. We call it 10 days, but it's really, if you take the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah away and you take Yom Kippur, that's the 10th day. We're left with 7 days. So it's really 7 days of focusing and doing this work, and there's so many volumes and books and different opinions, different rabbis, different centuries, Sephardic, Mizrahi, Ashkenaz, Litvak, and Hasidic, and it's like tshuva, tshuva, tshuva. The Rebbe doesn't hear us say tshuva. This is during the period right before Yom Kippur. This is the time. Yeah, it is teshuvah, but it's not repenting from sins. Teshuvah literally is return. This is an invitation. This is really what he's telling his students. Return to you, to your deeper self, to your true self. When you were born into the world, you didn't know how to lie. You didn't know how to be impatient. You just were who you are. Could you imagine if we could be like that? And we can, at least some of us, some of the time. Ideally, all of us, more of the time. He said, for example, concerning faith, that after using the technique of quieting for several weeks, Chavre, I'm asking you to understand here how he understands time. He didn't say 2 days. He didn't say try it out for 3 days or on a Shabbat. But that piece that he shared with the students about faith, if you do this consistently for several weeks, then you get to a point, as all the Israelites arrived at after the splitting of the sea. We call it Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea. One of the phrases in the Song of the Sea, after the Hebrews got to the other side, they were now liberated, the Egyptians drowned, and they felt, wow, this is my God. They pointed to it. This is my God. And I will make a home for this God. And the Midrash says in Exodus Rabbah that the least sensitive person among the Israelites had such a visceral, intimate moment with God, more than Ezekiel's incredible vision of all the celestial beings. Don't ask me what that means. I don't know. But that's the basis for all of Kabbalah, was his vision of something way, way beyond what any one of us really can hold. But it was a vision. And what the Midrash teaches us is that as great as that was, what the maidservant, they call it, a maidservant, she actually was able to point. It was so visceral. It was not a vision. So he believes that he concludes, and he's telling his students, if you do this for several weeks, and I would invite us several weeks, how about a week? Dedicate your lives, maybe 5 minutes a day, 7 minutes, whatever works for you. Try it consistently for whatever time you feel you can realistically do this. See if you get to a point where you can say, oh my gosh, this is my God. I got it. I got what the Piaseczna was talking. Yeah, I can do this. That's how real he wants it to be for us. Not a theology where I believe in God. I mean, that's also important, especially to the Maimonides. That's very important. But again, I'm here and I believe in something that's out there. This is a visceral, palpable, immanent experience. It's not transcendental, it's immanent. And that's how he concludes, this is my God and I will praise him. It will be as if we ourselves are pointing. And then, in conclusion, the first time we were unable to grasp the full intent of our Master's thinking. Maybe some of you are feeling that right now. Yeah, okay, Yiska believes in this. I don't know, though, like, if I could really do this, or review it. Review it. Many, many times. Many times, he says, after some time the Eternal merited us again to hear these very teachings from our Master's holy mouth with an additional explanation. So he learned it again with the Rebbe. He encouraged us most insistently. He encouraged us to do this practice consistently and he insisted on it from his students. So I'm not going to insist. What I will do is I will suggest and invite you to dabble with it, to read it over again and to discuss it with whoever you discuss your discussions with, and try it out. Just try it out. Your families, your spouse, your friends, go out for lunch and talk about this. Right? It's not a matter of, in conclusion, it's not a matter of becoming a different person. He doesn't want us to become a different person. And anyway, we can't. We are who we are. Each one of us was created with intention to be who we are. The question is, are we maximizing the potential of who we can be? And that's what he wants. He so respects us. He so loves our potential. He does raise the bar. And it's a matter of just peeling off one layer, like peeling an onion, one layer after the next to discover who you are. You are already whatever that is. It's just concealed rather than revealed. So this practice invites us to peel, to become a peeler, to become a revealer, to become an explorer, a discoverer. It's like you're going on a hike and it's already there. You're exploring it. You're discovering it. And now we can explore the inner terrain. So on that note, I thank you again so much. Oh, before we conclude, are there any questions? Does anyone have a question? Please. Oh, thank God someone has a question.
Why 160th?
We have to go back to the Talmudic period, right? I will. There's a connection in Jew. Oh, okay. Thank you. Why does he quote? Well, why does he quote that, or why does the sages say 160? I think you mean why do the sages say that a dream is 1/60th prophecy? I don't know why. However, I do know that in Jewish law, the 1/60th is a metric that's referred to. For example, you're cooking chicken soup for Shabbat, and someone comes along, one of the kids, and by accident spills a little milk into the chicken soup. And what do? You go to the rabbi, it's Erev Shabbat. What am I going to do? This is crazy. Well, do you believe the proportion of the milk to the soup was less than 1/60th? Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. Okay, you can have it. Don't ever say it's more than a 60th. Then you won't be able to have it. So, but I don't know in Jewish law how they arrived at the 60th, but there must be a connection to this teaching in the Talmud of the 60th.
Because it also came up with when you bring care to someone who's suffering, that you take a 60th of their suffering. Didn't we just talk about
We
this?
did.
I was paying attention.
Okay, the rabbi has the third example. Again,
It's the same number.
yeah.
Regarding that, why do they say the 1/60th? I think that's because when we take away 1/60th of someone's suffering, it will not make us trade.
Whoa.
And that's how it can, for me, that's how it, that's how it connects. It won't make me trade. So then that makes me wonder, going back to the dream and the prophecy, if it's, what does it say, a dream is 1/60th of prophecy? Because maybe a prophecy is so powerful it'll just blow us away, but 1/60th, it won't blow us away. Maybe it won't make
Right,
it.
it's below a proportion.
And if you've got something teeter-tottering,
Yeah.
1/60th is a small fraction, but that's
Beautiful.
enough to just turn the whole thing.
Right,
toward
beautiful.
Healing, towards
Yes.
healthness, towards
Oh,
new
wonderful.
vision.
Okay, there's your answer. Yeah. There's your answer to your question. We have time for one more? Yes, please.
Good job of crowdsourcing. So I'm wondering about how is this different than other meditative practices? I mean, do you see this as just one way of doing it? Do you think this is somehow different? Because to me, this sounds very much like my meditation practice.
Well, I don't know what your practice is. As I've been taught, I have not dabbled in non-Jewish. I was not let's say, go to India and then go to different tribal communities. go to South America. I learned this already within me being in the Jewish world. However, students of mine over the years, and I've gone to several retreats where people share at the end, especially in Israel, many Israelis will say, this is similar to what I was doing in India or in South America, in Mexico. This is how I understand it, but again, it's just, I could be misunderstanding it. The goal here, and I mentioned it, I hope I mentioned it in the beginning, the goal is not to quiet the mind. For many practices, when you empty yourself out of the distractions, you're in a place where there's more serenity and less confusion, and you're more anchored. So the practice is to reach that place. Here, the practice is, it includes that, but the goal, the end goal, is to encounter the divine presence within us. Because not only is it like amazing that I can encounter that peace of God that's in my soul, but what happens when I do that, then it provides a medium for me to connect with you. See, right now I'm connecting with the deeper part of you as you're connecting with the deeper part of me. I really don't know you. I don't know what you like, what you don't like, how you think, how you vote, how you speak, how you dress, what foods you eat. All those externalities are important also. That's how we develop friendships. But right now in the Jewish world, or at least since the past 2,000 years, since the destruction of the Second Temple, our problem has not been, I eat meat and you eat dairy. We have a much bigger problem. And it has to do with this not holding space for another person. And there's so much fear and so much hatred and so much intolerance because we're looking at each other externally. So Jewish meditation, I mean, we learn it starting with the Baal Shem Tov. He doesn't believe he's taught anything new. He was reclaiming something from our Avot and Imahot, the patriarchs and matriarchs, pre-Matan Torah. Once the Torah was given, we got a little bit maybe too involved with the laws, and we kind of lost what the Avot and Imahot gave us, which is consciousness. Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cardoza, contemporary rabbi in Israel, he teaches about this. If all it means to be a Jew is to study the 613 mitzvot, why do we need a book of Genesis? For what? It's all pre-Matan Torah. He said to cultivate a consciousness of God so we would want to fulfill the 613 mitzvot. Right. Yeah, so the consciousness of the presence in me is not where I just sit on my laurels and say, oh, I'm having an amazing moment. That's how I can go out into the world and connect with you. And not only with you as a Jew, other people as human beings, the whole species of the human beings, but then even more. We have a mandate from our Creator, and this is where we're also failing the Creator, not only in our not connecting with each other, it's how we treat the world. What do I see with birds and fish and animals? We have a mandate from the Gan Eden. We're supposed to shomer, we're supposed to protect. And then even beyond that, the realm of all the vegetative world, the fruit trees, or the herbs, vegetables. And then even the lowest, what we call the lowest, which was the first in creation, is the inanimate, soil, water. I'll tell you, no exaggeration, some of you have been in my garden. When I sit in my garden 6:30 in the morning with my first cup of coffee, and I hear the birds chirping, and I'm looking at all the different colors, I'm with God, that I am in the Holy of Holies. Now, to get from when I wasn't doing that to doing that, it took this. I first had to find that in other people. So that's what makes meditation Jewish meditation, or spiritual practice, Jewish spiritual practice. The end goal is to have a greater sensitivity to the non-physical, to the world of energy, to the world of vibrations, to the world of channeling, a greater way of being in the world, which is a softer way. It's so ironic because it is the higher, and in terms of presence, really much stronger, and yet it's a presence of compassion and gentleness. So I hope that responds here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all.
Thank you. If I could take just a minute It's okay if you need to go. I wanted to share that many of you know that my mother died fairly suddenly on July 3rd. And I was in my shiva when Robin died on July 5th. And so I couldn't be at the funeral. I wrote something. And I didn't get to mourn on a certain level in the way that you sometimes do when you're at a funeral. And I had a real deep love for Robin, and even different than my love for David. And I got to mourn a little bit when we did the unveiling. But I am entering, and you are entering, our 10th month of St. Kaddish, of mourning, our last little bit. And it is traditional sometimes after you study to say the Kaddish de Rabbanan. And to be able to say the Kaddish de Rabbanan and to remember your mom's memory and to remember my mom's memory. And I will also share that I know that I needed to study something for my own soul after the most recent election in America. And I started studying the Pietzner Rebbe. And often I find when I read, I'm saying, oh, that'll be for a sermon. Let me put that in this file. And I'm not studying for a sermon now. I am studying for my soul. And I need it. And I'm specifically saying, I read something amazing. It's not going to go in a sermon because I just need to sit with it and hold it. And so I also want to think of the Pietzner Rebbe as we say Kaddish. Everyone says Kaddish de Rabbanan. There's a book in front of you. If you're in the front row, it's below you, underneath. The Kaddish de Rabbanan is page 125. And if you could join me in saying the Kaddish de Rabbanan, it's typical you say it after you study, so you are all fine to say. Because I have not yet said Kaddish today. 125. If you're able, please stand. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divrach iruteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ma'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olomei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kusha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmidei Hon ve'al kol Talmidei Hon ve'al kol manda askin be'oraita di ve'atra haden ve'di ve'chol atar ve'atar Yehei lechon u'lechon shlama rabba china v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin arichin u'mezona reviche ufurkana mi kadam avuhon divshmaya v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav u'rachamav yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Thank you all so much for being here. Grab flyers for our upcoming series on Israel at this moment, happening on Tuesday nights. And continue to join us. Thank you so much. What a beautiful, beautiful night. Thank you. Thank you.
Very welcome. I think it connected a little.
Very much so. Felt it. My mom went to like
My soul and continue to Wow, you know, I'm going to be with Roman. He's mentioned also in this book, The Name of Children, where he offers a lot of different modalities that I'm not really saying anything new. And I believe it was his hope that we don't think he's just being humble. He really believes that deep inside, based on the Devoted approach, this is how we began as a people. What makes it new, though, is he couched it in yours, in holy, rather than Israel 2,000 years ago. So he was speaking to a very different audience. But yet, he connected to many of them. Thank you.
Interesting stuff because he's very good at it.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
Perhaps we have a conversation on Zoom.
Thank you for bringing.
Several things
I'll actually nail him down.
That guy resonates?
Yeah, that's good.
That's where it goes. You need to share. Yeah. Why don't we?
So that's what I was wondering.
I feel it's good.
As they say, because right She's great. I'm a dog watcher. And you're here and oh, sure, Ruben, Dominic. Yeah. You're the of course, our lawyer, I think.
Give me a blessing. All the good ones. This is what I choose in.
There's a place that anchors you that's going.
Yeah. For the past 10 years, I've had
Amazing.
So I just read his and your brother was in this
Yeah, well, last time we were there was right before the war started. We were there for a wedding. Left on the 4th.
really horrible.
You know, if
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you. Were you with your brother? With your brother Paul?
Great to see
I've been to the council.
I was there as a journalist that took pictures of when he came to the airport.
Remember what
First event, I said, you gotta go.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another Sharansky story. When I was there, here he comes down the plane, and he's there for, the World Union of Jewish Students was, organized heavily in Greece.
Oh,
Yeah. Anyway, so they came, and he wasn't a religious guy, but his wife was. And so when he gets up to speak, before he gets up to speak, he says, keep up on it. And the whole, it was part of the Orthodox community that helped bring it. And the whole place went wild. He's not just a small people, And I was the only one allowed to photograph at the main event of the beginning of the war because I was trying to believe
The world you have.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much. I'm really touched. Rabbi Shapiro is exploded 10 years ago. How in the midst of all of this horror, he was writing about just
He lived it. He lived it. Whatever he taught, he lived it.
so
That would be bring in the verses that support each other. Bring in the Peshat, bring in the Hasidic and the Hasidic. Bring my Torah, and the end, the story of practice that helps cultivate that midah. It's very Hasidic
I just want to say and that's what makes us Jewish. That is the point. I really don't. But I feel we also know that my journey where I really it's all a matter. What is it? Not in no way anyway suggests but nothing other than hold yourself. You know, it says more than one text. When you have two kinds of children, biological children, right? Physical children, biological children, we give them life and death. Spiritual children, we give them life and death. And it's a very important tradition in our culture. Whatever I share with you, you're one of the children. I really believe that's the connection. So if you, then it's the Masorah, it doesn't really mean tradition. We call that Masorah means to hand over. To hand over. Masorah, exactly. Masorah Dashfam, to hand over warm regards. So if you learn a piece of this I mark
Yeah.
with
anybody. It's not biological children, and also biological children. They don't always be spiritual children. So it's just another avenue to not to replace, not so you can feel good, but just so you can experience some type of mothering, some type of parenting, some type of guidance, giving life, nurturing. You can pre-order it right now. You go right on.
Gonna be a tin can?
really up to universities and the rest. Probably.
The decision to shape your soul, and what you do with your soul determines how it takes the So if you're
So on the source sheet is my email address. Please be in touch if you would like. So visit the Human Garden, have a cup of tea, we can meditate, share some sacred time together. This is my 12th and final show, going back tomorrow.
The 12?
Yeah.
Have they all been on this?
No, this one I taught in Scottsdale.
Workshop, somebody where Sarah.
Oh, she came to last night when I shared this. She's not well.
Oh, we're still on. Rhonda, not Victoria, hi. Still on. Probably should end the
You
event.
two are kindred souls. I mean, well, like, because I'm in this role and she's here. But, like, all of it, like, for people in the Shav and,
Did you know somebody has a story
I must know. Yeah. And that's what I am in renewal. That's the renewal content. Like, Ruth Congregan. That's where I go every month for Kabbalah Shabbat. It's the renewal. And when my book launches, I'm going to conversation today. So we're. Do you know when Aviva and Peter Turner by any chance?
I may have brought traits with me.
I get the sense. I mean, these children so much. I've been by them for many years. They're more in the Orthodox, but in a spiritual, like in a mindful practice way. Yeah.
So that means you do think there's wrong, but that's great. It's more love renewal.
I'm with you. It's the music, it's the Levi circle, it's everything that happens all the time sees. There's the whole lens. You can only be on a higher, like, it's not even a higher consciousness, because that implies there's a lower consciousness. If you're alive, that's what it means to be. And we can't really be fully alive without being
Yeah, I
the
mean, I
divine
know
presence.
some people who,
For me, it's faith, so
Yeah.
to go
like someone I know at Bethel,
to grab it. Yeah, when I was with Reb Zalman, once I went to the beach, and we saw to the sunset in San Francisco with about 4 other people. And when he watched the sunset, he said that's Hashem.
just interesting.
That's, but I will always remember that.